All right, welcome to the Running Restaurants podcast. We're bringing the tips, tools, and techniques you need to make your restaurant more profitable and more successful. I'm your host, Jamie Oikel. Got a great episode for you with Michael Tronn, Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer at 3 Hospitality, which is opened a restaurant called Timber, which is in the Fort Lauderdale marketplace. So, Michael, backstory that from what I read is quite captivating. So, give folks a little bit of your background, and we'll get into it. What you got?
Sure. Yeah, my backstory in hospitality starts when I was 16 years old in New York, doing events in nightclubs primarily before there was even such a thing as promoters, when it was just like all like based around like popularity and creativity. And I happened to I happened to do some events in some clubs in New York. Yeah, when I was 16, when I was studying art and fashion at LaGuardia High School. And for one of my thesis projects, I did a fashion show, which led to several other fashion shows. And then one of the, in nightclubs. And then one of the heads of one of the nightclubs said, since you're getting such a good response from these shows, why don't you just have parties?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll pay you to do them, and you won't have to make all these clothes. So at 16, that sounded really good. And I did it for like, I think 8 years in New York. And then about another 8 years in Miami and some time in Los Angeles. And now Timber is the 34th place that I've been responsible for. Um, and it is certainly the biggest build that I've done in terms of design and construction. And it took 5 years to complete.
Wow.
And yeah, and obviously a big investment. And it was almost a ground floor build, and it's been very well received.
Excellent. I'm going to come back to a couple of those things, but so you you must have seen a lot. I mean, to be in the New York party scene in Miami, and now in Fort Lauderdale, some really active stuff there. Let's stay with the Fort Lauderdale restaurant. I've we spent some time in Miami marketplace, been to that Los Olas area in Fort Lauderdale, but this is going back some years. Tell me what's going on there now. The size and scope of the concept is pretty dramatic. So how do you tackle going into an upscale market like that area? What are you looking at? How do you design it? How do you put it all together?
Sure. Well, I have two partners, and one of them had the property already, and it was a different nightclub here. Well, the property had been several nightclubs and also a drugstore. The building's 110 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a men's clothing store at 1.2 in like the 40s.
Nice.
The how did we? So let's see. The way that I put it together was by thinking about the things that I liked, and but not only that I liked, but what I felt would be comforting and attractive to others.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm always thinking about other people's experiences. Not just myself, which I think is a surprising differentiator. I think a lot of people. Um, they think that their first ideas are great ideas, and
Sure.
then that's all they think about, and they just execute them. And sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. For me, I have a system over that I've developed over what's roughly, I think, 35 years at this point. And I'm writing about that now. It's like a symphony for the senses
Okay.
concept. And it's quite literal that when doing a restaurant or a nightclub, it is a symphony for the senses. It is every single element that you can touch, is communicating something to the guest. Um, and so I like to try to speak to them on the conscious level, on the subconscious level, and then using all of their senses to give them something that they might not even realize that they want. In the case of Timber, being in the post-COVID era, certainly comfort was a very big part of
Mm-hmm.
it. Familiarity is also a big part of it, as you can see the renderings behind me is the exterior of the building. and then also inspiration and creativity and evoking imagination. So timber checks all of those boxes. There's thousands of details in it. There's 3 rooms that are completely unique from one another in it, although they do work holistically together and they do tell a story. So um, when I am working on crafting a concept or design, all of these variables come into place. And it's also not only the design; it's design as marketing. It's design
Hmm.
as a user experience. And obviously, in the moment that we're in now with social media, particularly Instagram,
Hmm.
everything has to be an Instagrammable moment from the napkin to the culinary and beverage offerings.
I'm just scribbling down a whole bunch of stuff. I got lots of notes to come back to there, Michael.
Sure.
Tell me about that. Let's actually stay right there because that's fascinating to think about. You talked about thousands of details. You talked about Instagrammable moments, and in a venue like yours, yeah, you want folks to share it and hashtag it out. How do you design those shareable moments? How do you think about it? How do you space them out so that they can be taken advantage of in multiple vantage points and multiple locations?
Sure.
Tell me some more.
Well, it's living theater. So, the restaurant itself, I would say, is a stage and or an immersive art experience. But unlike a theater production, it's not just an audience sitting and watching something, but they're involved, they're
Hmm.
participating.
Hmm.
um, the staff are characters, their uniforms are costumes largely, in a way. I mean, they're not costumey in a silly sense, but even with them and the linen shirts that I have them wearing, it's definitely designed to evoke a Malibu, Martha's Vineyard, Napa Valley kind of a vibe.
Nice.
So everywhere you turn in the different rooms in Timber, there is something to see. So in the front room, which is called the park, there are real trees in there. We have an 18 foot high ceiling, and it feels like you are in a park. There's trees. There are custom made firefly lights. There are live edge tables, dining tables, all custom made. And then our seating is also very original. The booths are upholstered in um, sort of a vintage age denim. They're
Hmm.
incredibly soft and they're very unusual because people don't typically use denim in design because the color rubs off on other people's clothing. In our
Yeah.
case, we had the denim treated so that it would not do that. And that was something that I really wanted because, of course, denim evokes people's favorite pairs of jeans. And in addition to the denim, our cushions are also not like any other restaurant cushions. Normally, they're hard, or hard enough to make people not want to stay for a very long time, or
Hmm.
they're commercial, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In our case, I wanted them to be like a sofa at your house, and they are. And we had to do 6 different cushion stuffing tests in order to
Mm.
get to it. Yeah, it was a lot. Everything
Yeah.
here was tested in multiple times. So now they're great, and people notice them, and they love them, and they talk about them. And I have people who I would not expect to notice the details frequently talk to me, and they come up to me and they say, "Thank you for creating this. This is something Fort Lauderdale really needed."
Mm.
And they really do appreciate it, not only subconsciously but as consciously as well, which is really, really nice.
Absolutely. We had an interview relatively recently that focused on marketing and branding, and so obviously a lot of the stuff you just talked about relates to branding, right? It's the vibe, it's the feeling, it's the whole thing you get. It's not the logo or just the color. It's the entire experience. So how do you've launched so many projects, so many events? How do you describe branding?
Well, I mean, it all goes together. There isn't, when I think about branding, it's it's the product, it's the people, it's the process, it's the memory that begins when a person first hears about whatever it is
Mhm.
that you're promoting, and then it's the duration of that memory until they're so old that they forget it, or they move on in life. But branding is perception.
Mhm.
It's certainly, you're right. It's not just a logo. It is, and it's not just design. It is a holistic experience. And I think, speaking to what I said before, it's all of the senses working together to give a guest a memory. Actually, I think more than being in hospitality, we're in the memory making business.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I think that would be my answer to that.
What about like mistakes when around branding and around marketing? You've seen a lot. Is there anything you'd point to? You say, "Ooh, I'm not to name names," or it could you can even point the finger at yourself. Man, I did that bad. But mistakes you've seen people do in the marketing and branding space. What do you think?
Yes, for sure. Logo over usage
Mhm.
is definitely awful. I definitely do not believe in over branding, using of a logo. I mean, on site, people know where they are. They don't need a constant reminder.
Mhm.
It takes what can be a very nice and intimate relationship between venue and guest. And if you logo your place to death, then you're just selling, and you're selling something that they've already bought. So
Mhm.
there's really no need to do that. Most of the places that I grew up with didn't even have signage outside. So to me, signage and logos were kind of uncool. And I still feel that way. I'm thinking of some of the great places in New York, and signage is always very, very minimal. And I think it's because, places that are successful are clubhouses. And
Mhm.
part of a clubhouse experience is, um, I don't want to say that it's secret, but there's a scene, there's a community there. And if you have your core community, then you don't need to oversell to them.
Yeah, I have a question that relates to if you could share your thoughts on a wide basis. And some folks have a little bit of money to spend, some have medium, and some have a lot to spend. So, kind of with different budgets in mind, how do you think other restaurateurs can create more experience at their venues to imbibe this culture stuff, to imbibe a following? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, they should just call me.
Yeah.
But uh, but in all honesty, you have to create something that's not only interesting to yourself, although that's a really good place to start. But you've got to think about where you are. What city are you in? What are the I don't like to refer to people as demographics, but what are the crowds that are
Mhm,
around?
mhm,
um, who are you creating for? What are your expectations out of building the business that you want to build? I mean, you got to know what your targets are in advance. If you don't, I think there are some people who can strike lightning in a bottle once, maybe twice, just
yeah.
by luck and timing. Um, but I have not seen a lot of people who can do 34 venues or multiple cities. I think the multiple city thing is very uncommon.
Mhm,
um, but I think it speaks to what I was saying, like it's almost like, how do you become an expert without doing? But you have to be an expert to succeed, I think, in this business. So for new people, I would say do something really interesting, really
mhm.
imaginative, capture the attention of wherever you are, and hopefully the media as well, wherever you are. um, and be clear about having your product match the people that you want to reach.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the other thing is, you have to have imagination. If you don't have that, you're just not going to succeed. Um, and you have to follow. Or there's a movie. Field of Dreams where Kevin
Hmm.
Costner
Hmm.
in hospitality, that is definitely not true. If you build it not come, you have to build it and then market the hell out of it, and then they will come. Um,
Yeah.
so
Hey, a question for you because you hinted at this. Hey, folks, give me a call. So, in addition to timber, do you do consulting for folks around the country and ideas? Tell me about that.
I mean, I have.
Yeah.
So sure, I would for the right project.
Mm,
I think about, we are planning on opening more timbers, but
mm,
in terms of myself, sure. I mean, I think about fantastic experiences that could be created in a number of cities, be it Las Vegas, Los Angeles. I've worked in Las Vegas. I've worked in New York. I've worked in Miami. So yes, I think for me, I guess to answer a yes or no question, the answer would be yes.
mm. Yeah. Good. There we go. So we'll we'll make sure they have a way to reach out to you. But let's go to the people part of the business because that is a crazy component about what you do. You need lots of people to make it happen. You got to find the right people. You got to train them. You got to keep them motivated, and so forth. And you got to give them growth opportunities. How have you thought about leadership of people over the time you've been involved in restaurants? How are you finding people these days and growing them and motivating them? What do you think?
Obviously your team is incredibly important. And I think that there are characteristics that one would need to have a good team. And the word that comes to mind off the top of my head, it's kindness. I
Mm,
mean, we personality first and foremost. And so it's not only about knowing what you do, but it's about how you communicate with the guest. How do you make them feel good, feel special, feel catered to? So the other things can be trained, but you have to have good-hearted people with you from the start. And then, of course, you have to train them really well too. There's a book that one of my partners brought to us early in the I guess in the staffing phase called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's
yep.
obviously a very book in the industry. And I think it's a really good book. I think that if you are going into hospitality, that would be a cornerstone. And I think that that really speaks to the guest experience. So, in terms of staff, kindness, professionalism, attitude, patience, um, and performance,
Mm.
um, for sure.
Yeah, good list of characteristics there, and the people will absolutely make the difference. That book has come up time and time again. It's very well recommended. So I appreciate you sharing that as well, and given that there is from your PR team, your history goes back into revitalizing communities and developing neighborhoods, and that's part of it. And a lot of time, restaurants do start on the fringe of a neighborhood and build a whole character, and that can be a fun and challenging part. Tell me about some stories you have there.
Sure. So I was part of, I guess, several different early community developments. The first would be in New York,
Mhm.
even in the meatpacking district. Now obviously a luxury location for retail and restaurants and not really nightclubs anymore, but at one time it was. At one point, the meatpacking district was actually where the meat entered Manhattan, and it was a very bad neighborhood, but very bad neighborhoods lend themselves to very good nightclubs. So I think I was 21 or 22, there was a club over there called Mars, and I promoted that on Saturday nights. Um, so that would be, I would say, an example of pioneering early neighborhood. That's one. Also, I did work in the East Village at a club called The World, which I had a whole building that I was responsible for that was adjacent to it. That was like I would hardly say VIP, but a separate area for downtown cool VIP people.
Mhm.
Um, Involved in the East Village, I don't know, commercialization, I guess. Then coming to Miami in the early 90s, when, before Miami was even a thing, um, both as a guest and then later as someone who did a bunch of clubs and projects in Miami. South Beach specifically was definitely part of the revitalization of South Beach. Well, I shouldn't say ran. I was the creative and marketing director for the Studio 54 of Miami, which was a club called Liquid. I then went on to do another project, which was a club called Crowbar, which also lasted for
Hmm.
many people think that was the last good club in Miami, and I am inclined to agree. Um, then I was also part of well, actually in Miami, I also was on a council selected by the mayor David Dermer for all of the branding and all of the business development and marketing for Miami and the beaches. And they really needed that kind of help. They were doing a very commercial, sort of housewife driven advertising media buy just because they didn't really know any better, truthfully. And they were doing these very generic looking ads, running them in Women's Day and Good Housekeeping and things of that nature. Um, and one of my contributions to the council was changing the media buy and changing the advertising strategy, because the people who South Beach would innately appeal to are actually not Midwestern housewives or families. They are. It was founded really on inexpensive fashion shoot production, and so I redirected them back into that space. And I told them, you should be buying ads. If you're going to buy ads at all, then it should be in Vogue and W and Vanity Fair. And they did exactly that, with much more cool, high fashion looking ads. They also changed the logo for all of Miami, which now has this sort of interesting architectural logo. And before, again, it was very commercial. So I think part of um, Miami's vibe overall, and that it's like this international cool destination. Obviously, there's lots of components that have created that, and huge for creation and development. But the cool factor definitely is by how it's marketed. And then to just speak to Wynwood, which is Miami's very hip art district, yeah, there was nothing there for. I mean, it was a warehouse district, and there really was nothing. Um, but me, or I should say, myself and a group of other artists, because I have a whole separate art career, which goes with the design. Um, the the people in well, okay, sorry, I'm going to start that story over. So Uh, so in the early 2000s, like 2003, I think it was, when Wynwood was just a bunch of warehouses, myself and about 20 or so other artists were um, given given these empty warehouses to do these big art pop-ups once a month, which was called Fridays. And the gentleman who owned a lot of these warehouses was the developer, David Lombardi, and he realized that the way to activate a neighborhood is art, most especially because when you have a lot of empty warehouses, what's the thing you can do with them? You can fill them with exhibits. Now, unlike a lot of cities that have replicated the formula, even Los Angeles, the art has to be very well. If you just put a bunch of art student work on there, it's not going to resonate in the same way. It's not going to be taken seriously. So the people who curated these exhibits, and the artists who showed in them are now museum caliber, and have, I would say the majority have had either a lot of success, some of whom are very well known in the arts community, and certainly many of us have had individual exhibits, myself included, which also was in the design district in Miami, which has since also exploded in a different way. So Wynwood maintained its art origin, and some people say I'm one of the person to be credited with painting on the outside of buildings, because I had a house that I bought
Yeah.
and painted all over the exterior. So maybe I was the first. I don't know, but it is something that people say. In terms of the design district, that was sort of mm, a district that had happened mostly for interior designers, and it had popped, and then it sort of had waned a little bit. And then a developer called Craig Robbins from DACRA invested heavily in the area and was able to transition it from a art gallery and only interior design neighborhood into our version of like a Rodeo Drive. So and it's really actually it's even better. But in terms of building the community, to speak to that, um, yeah, it's usually with art,
Mhm.
and then come restaurants, and then comes retail, and then um, if you do it right, and then there are certainly people who know how to better. Like the Goldman family is very good at this. They were involved. I knew them from New York up, and um, they definitely pioneers in South Beach and also pioneers in Wynwood. So, but yeah, building community. It's very similar to doing a restaurant or a nightclub. I mean, I think any venue is a destination, and any destination, although obviously dealing with the neighborhood, it's not a specific venue. Is I do approach it the same way. I think about you know who do we want to be? What are we creating? It's all very conscious. It's not, again, to speak to the thing that I am thinking about that people uh, miscalculate a lot is in fundamental questions that they should know before doing a restaurant or a nightclub or even retail or even a city.
Question for you. One thing that I want to ask you, and this will probably be my last main question, is you've got your finger on the pulse. You're designing new places. You're talking with folks. Where do you think things are 2 years from now, 5 years from now in the hospitality segment? What are some future trends?
So future hospitality trends. Um, I think that what we're going to get into is speaks really what I do, like this symphonic experience. I mean, Instagram is not going away. AI is only going to expand. I don't necessarily foresee that every person is going to be replaced with a robot, even though I know there will be those kind of restaurants that are sort of gimmicky in that way. But people really care about human interaction. So I think restaurants as we know them will remain. Um, I do think, however, the Instagrammable element is only going to increase as the space gets more crowded and as um, the requirement of receiving attention and getting excited guests to share their experiences online and via word of mouth. Yeah, you just have to be better. You have to be more interesting, and you have to be better. And really, I like to think you have to be the best in your city. Um, and in the case of Timber, knowing the statistics compared to every other restaurant here, um, per seat, we are the most popular restaurant in town, and we have done that in literally 4 months. So, and open strong. Make sure your opening is strong. Anyone who says that you're going to just open and put out a velvet rope and magically people are coming, I know I spoke to this earlier. Yeah, that's not true. So, open very strong.
Excellent. Michael, last thing, you mentioned a couple books earlier. Anything else on your reading table? Anything you're reading right now? Anything else you recommend for folks, or any other quotes you want to share? Any parting wisdom? I'll open the floor for you.
Yes, I would definitely say I encourage people to follow their intuitions a lot, despite all the science that I apply to what I do, because it is an art and a science. It's not one or the other. Um, and I, oh, I definitely believe in following my intuition. To give you an example, we had a completely different design for Timber for like 6 weeks. That was very modern, and I lived with it for about 6 weeks, and even though I had designed it too, something just was not resonating for me. Like this was the wrong design. I told my partners that I wanted something warmer, and they were very understanding, and very supportive of the change. So I think, um, get to know yourself, uh, figure out what you think where the void is in your community and fill that void. Do the thing that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, you're going to lose interest. Um, Use your mind, of course, but definitely also.
Good. Yep.
Sorry, it's one of my biggest things that I say. When I am working on a project, it's not, I don't look at it about like how can I get business from the community, because that's very take. I'm very much like, what can I give to the community, and then we're creating a relationship. And I think that is very, very different from a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah. Good one, Michael. Websites, socials, where can they find you? Where should they go? Hit them.
So for our socials for Timber, it's all across the board. Timber, TIMBR _ restaurant. That will be on Instagram and Facebook. Myself is just Michael, MICHAEL. Tronn, TRONN. All my for same thing. Instagram, Facebook is there. And then if you are curious about me personally, it's michaeltronn.com. Or Catalyst XM, which stands for experiential marketing, also.com. And if you happen to be curious about contemporary art, then I have Michael Tronn Gallery.
There you go. Yeah, we didn't get into the art stuff, but perhaps in the future. All right, folks. Michael Tronn of 3 Hospitality and Timber. You can find him on the web at www.timber-restaurant.com. Michael's personal website is michaeltronn.com. 2 N's there at the end. TRONN.com. For more great restaurant marketing, people, service, and tech news, stay tuned to us here at runningrestaurants.com. In the meantime, do us a favor, like the episode, share it, rate it, review it. All that stuff is super helpful for us and helps spread the word. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.